Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good Friday afternoon to you, the 27th, just after Christmas. Hope everybody enjoyed their holidays or are still enjoying their holidays. That Santa Claus came to visit you and had everything in good cheer and in good health and all that stuff. And a prosperous, hopeful 2025 that's upcoming. So, what I like to do is a video of what I've been up to lately in respects to some loading and my parcels that arrived and whatnot through the Canada Post strike. And I still have one out that I mailed to a gentleman. I did part ways with my Newman hammer double. I kind of I kept my Henry Piper and I kept my Belgian 16 uh, Damascus barrels, both of them. I also have the Army and Navy Damascus, so that's kind of my little clique of Damascus guns I have right now, and also my percussion shotgun that I have, my Hopkins, also English, muzzle-loading percussion 12 gauge with twist barrels. But that being said, the topic of this video is some components I recently purchased and what I'm going to do with them. So without further ado, everybody knows that I have a fluid barreled French MAT 16 gauge. It's in pretty darn good shape, you know. This was from Intersurplus, and I did a video on it already. And this one is chambered 2 9/16, 67 millimeters for you metric folks. Barrels are clean and clear. We're safe. No ammunition. This gun is nice and tight, well built. It's not the fanciest gun in the world. It's a certainly good quality gun. But the thing is with this gun, it has the shorter European spec chambers versus the American standard of 2 3/4 inch, which we normally see. You go to your gun shops and you buy your box of Federal Game loads or Winchester high brass upland loads, and it'll say 2 3/4 inch, 1 ounce or 1 1/8 ounce loads. There used to be a loading available for magnums for 1.25 ounces, and 1.25 ounce load in a 16 is stout. It's just as effective as a 12 gauge. That's what these here, with, if you want to be comparative with 1.125 ounce load in these and 1.125 ounce load in a 12 gauge, I really don't find any difference as far as, the velocities are pretty much the same. The pressures in the 16 gauge are a little higher because of the smaller bore. But as far as reaching out and touching something and getting something, making a clean shot, or smashing a clay target or whatnot, this 16, in respect to using the same shot weight and shell length, can pretty much hang with a 12 gauge with no problem. So 16 gauge was popular back in the day. It's still bought and used now, but not as much. Ammunition, if you don't reload, it's expensive up here. I don't know about the US or anywhere else, but a box of Federal Game loads at my local Canadian Tire store are over $40 a box. So I, of course, can reload, and once you build up an amount of materials you have with hulls and primers and wads and whatnot and different powders, once you have a supply of that, you can load within your means to make the loads you want that you can't find on a store shelf. And that's the nature of this video, is that I wanted to recreate a vintage smokeless fiber wad load instead of using a regular shot wad like this, like a plastic cup with a piston on it. This is what you see nowadays in most shot shells. Typical like this. This is for lead, obviously. There are steel shot shells, and the wads are a little different, but basically the same idea. You got a plastic shot cup, a cushion area, right there. I don't know if you can see. There you go. You can see the little legs there. When you fire, the gas seal right here expands to make a seal in the bore. and these little suspension leg squash makes compression. Your shot cup here encapsulates the shot, holds the shot, sends it out the barrel, and when it gets out, this discards, falls down, and the shot carries on to target. So with the fiber wads, it's a little different. So let me show you what's part of that. So you start out with a hull, a brand new hull. I bought 100 of these. These are primed Cheddite, or so I heard one guy call them Chedite. I don't know if that's the actual thing. I just call them Cheddite. That's how it's pronounced and looks to me. High brass, straight wall, meaning that the internal diameter is one consistent diameter from start to finish. Some hulls are tapered. I don't know the exact ones that are unless I consult a load manual, and they will say whether they're straight wall or whatnot. But that being said, you want, if you're going to be loading shot shells and you're loading this hull and it's a straight wall, or I should say the other way around. Let's say you're loading and you have tapered wall shells and you have a straight wad, and you think, oh well, that's a Remington hull and a Remington wad. Well, that you can put that together and it works. It's not always true. There are cases where certain wads are for certain Remington shells or Winchester shells or Federal, whatever. But in this case, what I wanted to do was recreate a vintage load from years ago in the ways and means that when you went to the gun shops years ago and you bought your old 16 gauge shells, this is what you found. These are original Canuck or Imperial Dominion, as we call them up here. These are number 4. These are 1 ounce field loads, and these are original full crimp. Some of them came as these now, right here, roll crimp, the old style, the old Imperial paper shell. So you bought those, and that's the kind of loadings or the shells you had available back then, way back in the day. But inside those shells, chances are you would not find this. What you would find are these. So let me explain to you how this works. So I showed you the shell right here. So you're going to put your gunpowder in, and usually the charge of powder will fill this area down here into the brass. And once that's filled, back then they had a disc type wad like this, like a gas seal, but it was made of a compressed fiber, very stiff, normally wax impregnated to resist moisture, and when they're fired they don't just fall apart, like they hold their shape and they seal the bore going out. So this was your gas seal, and in a modern shell, when they kind of transitioned over, they went to plastic. So this went to that, but they do the same thing, they seal the bore. So okay, we'll talk about this later. So in the old days, you had your flat nitro card or your gas seal. Then you would use what they call filler wads or cushion wads, and they came in various thicknesses, 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, what have you, and you can adjust them. You could put one, like here you go, you see it right here, or you could put 2, however you want to adjust your wad height. So what you would do is you'd put your card, your 2 pistons, let's say, and then you'd put your shot, but in the top of this is a fibrous wad, and it's really squishy. So it will come apart. You can take your fingers and you can tear these apart. There's not much to them. Like I just tore a little corner off right there, see? So these are for cushioning the shot, like on the piston of this wad here where the legs are. This crush section would do what essentially this does. So now we have that, and what we're going to do is the following. As soon as I find them here, right here. So you'd have your first, let's say gas seal, then your cushion area, then some guys will take it and they'll do this. And essentially what you're making is like a piston in a car. So let's say you have a compression ring here and a compression ring here to make seal. These swell out as well and catch the bore. So essentially you're making a giant seal. So then, you know, these were generally used with, you could use them with smokeless powder and black powder. They didn't use the plastic ones with black powder because black powder and plastic, when this little disc gets hit by the flames from the black powder, it disintegrates and melts and makes a fluidic, garbagey goop all over the bore wall. And every time you shoot it, it gets more and more and more. And by doing so, you get constriction, 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 constriction. And as you're trying to force a larger diameter object through a smaller constriction, you get more pressure, more recoil. It can be unpleasant sometimes, and you know what? In some cases, it can cause barrel problems, and we don't want that. So the loads that I wanted to recreate were using smokeless powder, and the powder that I chose to use in this case was Alliant Green Dot. It's like a light to medium load range powder. It's not a Magnum powder. It's sort of like a trap powder, but light field loads. Good for up to like ounce and an eighth, maybe ounce and a quarter in some things. But in 16 gauge, it's recommended for 1 ounce and 1 1/8 ounce loads. And I did find the powder charge and the shot weight in Lyman number 5. And when you talk to Cheddite hulls like this, they're straight walled. So I couldn't find any data in that book for this particular Cheddite hull, but there's data for Fiocchi hulls and it was for Federal hulls. And both of those cases are the same thing as this, straight wall. So the data, according to what I've read, now don't quote me, disclaimer, I'm using this in my gun. I'm not advocating that it's the thing to do with yours. You do it at your, if you want to use my load in your gun, by all means have at it, and I will disclose what I used. Just be careful in your loading practices. Measure your powder out correctly. Don't double charge. Same thing with your shot. Be careful when you're loading. Use the correct wads that I replicate here, and you should get the same pressure results as I do. And also, be assured your gun's in good shape. You know, you got like slop between the barrels, or it's like a rattle, or something like that, you know, or it's in rough shape, or the barrels are just like sewer pipes. You know, you might want to hold off on shooting the old barrel till a gunsmith looks at it. But these bores are just hunky-doo, no problems. Gun is snapshot, good and tight. So this gun, 2 9/16 chambered for modern ammunition, and these shells actually on the bag it says 2 3/4, but when I measure them, they're 2 9/16. We're in business, so I don't have to cut these or whatnot to adapt to fit those chambers. That's great because I got to make some on my mech loader, and they turned out pretty darn nice, I have to say so myself. I'll show you an example here. Here we go. So this is essentially what it became. As you can see there, that crimp is a nice deep fold crimp, nice and even, no bulging, no kinking in the case, and I got myself a nice field load here. So what did I use? Okay, so I just showed you that I used, in this case, the plastic gas seal. I used smokeless powder. So I wanted to maintain this on this wad. This is essentially that right there. There is a gas seal here. When you shoot, this obturates, they call it. It swells, catches the barrel. Well, this does the same thing. So I used this, and then I took a cushion wad like this, and I sat it on top. Okay. Then I took one of my fiber hard discs here, or nitro cards, and I put it on top of the cushion wad. So I have this. So I have gas seal, cushion, and this prevents the shot from upsetting back and obliterating this wad to prevent gas blow by. So if there's anything that leaks by here, this now will sort of catch what's left and will go out the barrel and send the shot onto target. Now, in this load, and in the old loads, they didn't have the shot cup per se. Sometimes they use what they call the Mylar wrap, where they take a thin layer of plastic, cut it, and they would roll it around the shot to encapsulate it. When the shot would go out, the Mylar wrap would fly and the shot would go down. But that's eventually what that transitioned into these. This was later. So I created this load, or this wad column, to use in this hull. So here you go. You got your powder here, and you got your wad column there, and then you got about up to here. You want to load them to about maybe 1/4 of an inch from the top with your shot. When I put 1 ounce, it's pretty much where my finger was there. And then when you cycle it in the machine, the Mech 600, it folds over, and this is what you're stuck with, or left with. I should say, not stuck with. It did very well. And there's what you're left with. So now this is a field load with 19 grains of green dot, and this wad column, and it's a Ballistic Products gas seal, a Ballistic Products 3/8 waxed 16 gauge cushion wad, and a 1/8 inch nitro card 16 gauge with an ounce of number 5 lead shot and full crimped. Now I haven't shot these yet, but I'm going to. So these loads are for this gun, and they should be pretty much on par with factory loads. The manual told me the velocity should be around the 1280 feet per second, and the pressure in PSI, if the book says, was around the 9,000 PSI mark. And for 16 gauge, that's not really that bad. Again, smaller bore shotguns generally run higher pressure than large ones. So, that being said, when you use fiber wads like this, instead of the plastic wads, I've read many articles where fiber wads also reduce the amount of pressure because they're more giving. They're not as stirred, they're not as rigid. So they're kind of, the pressure curve isn't as steep. So this is what they used in the old days, the old technology. Just because a shot shell boots you in the shoulder, it doesn't necessarily mean it's making a ton of pressure. It just means that it's a heavy payload. So you can get lighter loads, like I could say that this 1 ounce load, and let's say I had this one here loaded with 1 1/4 ounces. Well, you can bet assured that that 1 1/4 ounce load is going to recoil stouter than the 1 ounce because of the payload, not because of the powder charge per se. Normally, I found with slower burning, like what they call magnum powders, you can get a big push to your recoil, versus when you get faster burning target powders, you get that quick snap, like Clays or like Red Dot or like Green Dot. Those powders have a very fast burn rate, a very abrupt bang, and they make their pressure quick, so you get that big thump, like that quick snap, that quick jolt. I find with powders like Herco, Blue Dot, Unique, and a few others, that for the most part, the recoil, it's like a big push, but you're pushing a big payload. You have to maintain the speed to keep that payload going out so it doesn't lose all the steam going out the barrel. So a slower progressive burning powder is going to send that shot out without sacrificing velocity drop. versus a small light payload that you get a nice quick burn like that, and that shot's gone. It's out the barrel. It's a light load. So that being said, that's what I chose to use and replicate in those loads. I am going to be doing some with High Score 700X. I'm also going to try some with the red dot again. I had tried a few red dot loads, and I loaded them in these cases here. If I can just if you bear with me, I'll show you this one. The red dot load that I did find was in these for these Remington hulls, and loaded with a 209 Cheddite primer, and I loaded these with a plastic wad that was the twin to this, but for 16 gauge. So I used what they call the Remington R16. They were good for 1 ounce, 7/8 ounce to 1 1/8 ounce, but I loaded these for 1 ounce, and they were actually pretty snappy, you know, and pretty hard on target. Like they kept a nice pattern and whatnot. But I'm going to do some more shooting. The weather's not too bad today. I'm going to aim for tomorrow, no pun intended, to do that. I got some things I have to do this afternoon that just popped up, so my shooting is not going to happen today that I want to do. I may take this out and just go and try a couple of rounds to see the primer strike and watch for the brass swelling and whatnot, because where I did substitute the wad column, but not the powder charge nor the weight of the shot, I did substitute some info and some parts of the data, being the shot column. But the way I did it is that it actually should drop pressure a little bit. So I didn't do it in the sense where it's not safe. I did it in the sense where it may aid the old gun, but this gun is still perfectly capable of shooting plastic wad loads. There's no problem at all. I just wanted to be sort of, what if we recreated something from years ago and shoot from years ago and pattern it on a target, or you know, put it at a distance and check its performance. Can it still get it down? Can it still get down on its bad self? Can it still get the job done? And we are going to do that. Nice tight old gun still. I'm not going to talk too much about the gun. There is a video on my channel, the French MAT 16 gauge. Go watch it. Like, subscribe to it. And if you have any questions on the gun, by all means, ask. If you have any questions on loads, and what I did is taking some data from the book and manipulating it a sort of way to make it something from years ago. Again, I'm doing this on my own. It's my gun. I'm an experienced reloader. I've got a very good idea of pressure curves and pressures in general, and a good grasp and knowledge of what these guns can take safely and not jeopardize your well-being or jeopardize the firearm itself. I would never ever push a gun to failure. That's not what I do. I've seen some videos where guys push them and push them and push them, and for science. But if you get an inexperienced reloader that thinks he's doing, I'm going to add a couple of grains of powder, give it that extra thump, and get that extra 5 yards, it don't work like that. Be careful when you're reloading. Do it with good diligence. No distractions, nobody bugging you. Quiet evening at the reloading bench. Do your thing, and be very, very careful. So that being said, I am going to try these out. I'm going to figure out what this load is capable of doing. And again, the load is 19 grains of Alliant Green Dot, a Ballistic Products obturating gas seal. The part number for it is let me see here. Obturator 16 gauge gas seal number 02016, and that's from Ballistic Products themselves. There's the bag. I don't want to spill them. I'm kind of holding the bag here. but that's, you know, from Ballistic Products. You get them in bags of 250 of them here, and they're about 18 bucks in Canada. The other product I used was these, and I also used these. These are the waxed 3/8 16 gauge fiber column wads. I don't have the exact part number, but you can Google it and find it on their site. And then you have the 1/2 inch fiber wads, which I'm going to be using in the 700X loads I'm going to make, and some of the maybe the red dot ones. The part number for these is FC16. You get 500 in a bag for 20 bucks. And the hulls I purchased, which were the only 16 gauge ones available, they had them in different colors. I chose Pretty Blue, or Cheddite 2 3/4 inch primed straight wall hulls, and they will work fine in my gun. I also used the Ballistic Products Nitro cards 1/8 inch, and product number for those puppies, without spilling them, is NC16. So anyway, I'll leave you with that. Like and subscribe as always, guys. Rod always likes hearing from you. Comment below. Any questions, Rod will answer for you. And I'm going to try and put my email into my community thing. Somebody told me I could do that on YouTube. If you ever want to email me or contact me, you, by all means, I'll get a hold of you back. And if anybody's interested in one time doing some collaborations, channels with ammunition and whatnot, by all means, hook up with me. Maybe we can do a live stream, a live chat or something, and talk about the loads and stuff that we use and the guns that we use. And mind you, keeping conforming with the platform policies and whatnot, so nobody gets in any boo-boo troubles. So I'll leave you with that. I bid you a good weekend and good rest of your day. Be well, and we'll see you on the next one. And like I said, you can always message down below, and I'll always get back to you. Bye, everybody.